Hello, I'm Nehrenz. I'm not sure how you got a hold of this video. Maybe I gave you a copy, maybe you're watching it online, but one way or the other I have a story to tell you. I'm planning on moving to South Africa in November of 2009 to help my South African friends start an organization called Going North. Now, I wish that I could travel around the country and make presentations in the homes and schools and churches of all my friends and contacts around the country, but in the 2 months that I have, that's not really logistically possible. So I'm recording this video and trying to spread it out to as many people as possible to explain why I'm moving to South Africa, what Going North is going to be, and what I'm going to be doing there. So, here we go. So to start with, here's my background. In May of 2009, I graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a degree in journalism from Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication, and I also got my minor in African Studies. I spent most of my time focusing on documentary video journalism work, and a lot of that focused on organizations or stories from Africa. I've been very blessed, and since May of 2008, I've been able to go to Africa 4 different times, and I've been to the following 10 countries: South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Mozambique, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Swaziland. So the question that I'm most frequently asked when I'm back in America is, Mark, what did you do in Africa? And I guess the best way to succinctly sum up what I did trekking across 10 countries in Africa is this. I learned a lot, I loved a lot, and I spent time videotaping every single thing that I saw with the intent of bringing it back and showing as many people as possible wherever they are. And I have shared a lot of the stories, and I'm still doing that as we speak. So in order to explain why I plan to move to South Africa, I want to answer 2 questions that might be on your mind. First of all, why is this guy from Oklahoma so in love with Africa? And second, what have I been doing when I go there? Okay, so first up is the question, why am I so in love with Africa? I've been asked that question a lot, and I probably will be asked it a lot in the future, and I always answer with the same story. My freshman year at OU, I saw a documentary called Invisible Children after a college church service. I stayed after to watch it. And this movie completely changed my life, changed the course of my life, and flipped it upside down in the best way possible. You see, my freshman year, I was already in the journalism program. I already knew I wanted to do documentary work, and I'd even gotten the opportunity to be on national TV on a documentary on the History Channel. Here's a little bit of it right here.
You said you were not a protester.
Correct.
So what in that hour switched to where you were ready to die?
I saw what people with guns that are given orders can do in a situation.
And you've never heard an explanation for why it happened?
Just from my experience, I know why it happened.
And even after that amazingly awesome experience of being able to see how a documentary works and be on TV and stuff, I still knew I wanted to do documentary work, but I had no idea what field or what passion or any of that. And so, like I said, I saw Invisible Children, and all of that changed. Now, if you've seen the movie, then you know what I mean. You know what this movie inspires people to do. But if you haven't seen it, let me explain a little bit. It's a story about the children of northern Uganda and East Africa who are forced to fight as child soldiers and kidnapped by this rebel army called the LRA. And the story is very heart-wrenching and really, I don't know, opened my eyes to how people on the other side of the world are suffering through unbearable circumstances, and yet they are just people like us, trying to live normal lives just like we are, yet they're suffering through some of the most horrendous things you could possibly imagine. So as heart-wrenching as this story was, what really stirred my heart up was the story added on with the circumstances around the movie. You see, this documentary was made by 3 guys just a few years older than me from California, and they'd never even made a documentary before. It was their first time to make a movie, and this is what came out of it. And also, it was shown to me by 4 friends of the filmmakers who are traveling the country and living in an RV, volunteering their time just to spread this story to thousands of people across the U.S. And so what I saw the night that I saw Invisible Children was this. I saw my generation, people my age, opening eyes, making a difference, and changing the world essentially just by going out there and doing it. They didn't necessarily know what they were doing, they were just going for it. And I saw them doing it with a documentary. I saw the thing I already had passion for being used to improve the lives of kids on the other side of the world. And so from that point on, I didn't really know anything about Africa, I didn't know what I was doing, but I said, I want to do documentary work in Africa. So from that point on, I declared an African Studies minor. I got very involved with lots of different organizations dealing with Africa, watched tons of documentaries, and there you have it. That answers the question, how I fell in love with Africa. So now we come to the second question, which is what have I done in 4 consecutive trips back and forth from Africa in the equivalent of like 15 months. And the best way to sum it up is I'm going to explain really briefly what I've done each of the 4 times and then bring it all together and move on towards why I now plan on moving to South Africa. So, in May of 2008, I went on a 3-week mission trip to Kisumu, Kenya with Maisha International Orphanage, which is an orphan and widow program in rural western Kenya based out of Oklahoma City. The nonprofit is based here in Oklahoma City and there in Kenya. So I went for 3 weeks, took about 60, 70 hours of footage at this orphanage, and that was my first experience in Africa. Loved it, have tons of video online you can watch about it, and that totally stirred me up and just made me want to go back. That initial experience in Kenya was phenomenal and really opened my eyes to what Africa was like and made me want to keep doing more. So then this is where the story gets more interesting and keeps building on each other. Then I went to South Africa to the University of Pretoria as an exchange student from August till December of 2008. And I traveled all around Southern Africa, hit 6 countries outside of South Africa, and posted short documentary videos on my website, which is themarksperience.com, where I did lots of documentary shorts and just told as many stories as I could from as many places as possible to try to get people educated about what was going on in Africa. Now, it was a phenomenal experience and I shared a lot of stories, but probably the most impactful thing that happened was the last 3 weeks I was there, I went on a mission trip to Swaziland, which is one of the most heavily impacted countries with HIV/AIDS in the world. Almost half the population of the country is positive. And I went on a mission trip there with 350 South Africans for 2 weeks. We lived in tents in this big field and painted houses, worked with orphans, did all these things. But my job was to videotape everything. I made a daily video and just built these relationships by telling stories of this huge group of South Africans helping people in Swaziland. Now that was a phenomenal experience. Then I came back to America, was in school in the spring semester of 2009 at OU, but I took a short trip back to South Africa in February of 2009, and this is where things really start to get interesting. I went there and shot a documentary I made about Swaziland, but also just by happenstance I took this new video from Invisible Children called The Rescue, just kind of an update of how things are going in Uganda. So I took this video that had inspired me years before this organization, and I said, I want to share this with my friends in South Africa, the ones that I went to Swaziland with, and they didn't know anything about it. Long story short, I took 1 copy of the DVD. Actually, hold on, I have the copy. Let me go grab it. Okay, so here's the disc. Here's the copy of the... dropped it! Here's the copy of the Rescue from Invisible Children, which is the video that I took to South Africa in February and just started giving to my friends, and it spread like wildfire. By now, I've been told that 40,000 copies of this film have been spread across South Africa. And this is important because South Africa is, in many places, just as developed as the U.S. and a lot like the U.S., and people really don't know what's going on in Uganda or the rest of Africa in South Africa. And so for me to come show them this, it really opened their eyes to problems on their own continent. And that's weird for me, to be this American who's going to Africa and telling Africans what's going on in Uganda, but that's what happened. My first year at university, I saw a documentary called Invisible Children that was made by three American student filmmakers that's about, essentially they kind of accidentally ended up in a war area in northern Uganda and made this very compelling documentary about the children who were abducted and forced to fight as child soldiers there. And I saw that movie and it really moved me, it really touched me and made me think, you know, I could do that. I could go to Africa and make documentaries, and so.
And on a continent like Africa, then telling stories through videos can actually create like a massive awareness for what is really happening out there, and the stories of hope that there is as well.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we were English, come on boy. We were watching Invisible Children this afternoon. And when I gave it to Maxie, you know, I wanted to tell her that it's a story of hope, really.
Yeah.
You know,
so from that, something even bigger happened. I was meeting with my friend Adrian Adams, who I'll introduce you to here in a second. And they said, you know, we're very impassioned and emboldened by this. We want to do stuff, us South Africans. But we're kind of upset that it took an American showing us a film made by Americans to tell us what problems are going on in Africa.